Hey guys, welcome to another video walkthrough. This one is for Halloween, a special edition, and I've decided to recreate one of my favourite scenes from the film A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night by Anna Lily Amirpour. I don't know if anyone's seen the film, but it's an absolutely fantastic film, so do make sure you have a look at it. This is a really iconic scene. It looks like, if you haven't seen the film, it looks like Dracula's standing there and there's almost this vampire character, this female vampire who's about to bite his neck. It's actually not what's happening. She is a vampire, but he's actually just a normal boy who is dressed in this outfit because he went to a fancy dress Halloween party. But this is an absolutely iconic scene in the bedroom where he wakes up, and you'll actually find this scene on YouTube. If you type in "A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night" best scene, you'll find this scene. So I decided to recreate it. I started with just getting the still, as you can see there, and I used it in this respect. I was sort of debating whether to just use it as a reference or actually trace over it. I decided in the end to actually trace over it and paint. I know some people might see that as a bit of a cheat, but I think at the end of the day, whatever gets the results is what works. However, it is something I'm working on in terms of trying to play more by the kind of traditional rules and use it as a reference next time. So you can see I've just laid down a bunch of paint on top, and I started in black and white because the actual image is in black and white. I'm just it's called, I believe the term is values, so I'm just laying down values, so where the highlights, where the shadows, and I think I definitely struggled with this one, particularly on the girl's face, just trying to make it look natural, make those shadows look natural, because I think you see at the moment it looks very muddy. It's almost like it's not like shadows, it looks like there's dirt on her face. And I think it's always a problem with my gradients, and it's just trying to use a bit more of a softer blend. Really, I've actually recently developed a mixer brush as well, which I have started to use to blend my colours a little bit better, blend the values a little bit better. So you can see me playing around quite a bit here, and I go over her face quite a lot. Whereas with the guy's face, I'm kind of pretty settled and happy with it. There's that very bright light coming from the top that is shining directly on his face, and I kind of settle on that pretty quickly. But it's her face, just trying to get the shape. The other difficulty with her face is it's at a very slight angle, so you can see underneath her chin. And the difficulty was getting underneath the chin, but then also making the side of the face look like it was at a slight tilt. And one of the issues at the moment, and it does improve as the painting goes on, one of the issues at the moment is it looks like the face itself is completely from a side profile, but you can also see underneath the chin. And so you lose that very slight tilt angle to the head, which is what makes this scene, that the still so special, is that she's about to, it looks like she's sizing up his neck to drain blood from it, and so she's got a very slight angle to it. Here, see, I take the actress. There's actually a still from the film that was in colour, even though the film was in black and white. I took a still just to get some tones and just to have a bit of a reference for colours as I start laying them down. In my previous images, you've seen I haven't actually added colour later. I've painted in colour directly on to the piece. But in this one, I'm using separate layers. Now that I've got all the values down, I've then added a new layer and called it colour. Not called it colour. I've used the blending mode colour, and then used colours to sort of add these kind of values on top. But then after a while, once I've sort of got the colours in there, I'll start using the just normal blending mode for layers, just to start defining the shadows a little bit better. It's a constant sort of pull and push technique that I'm using here. So it's, if I was traditionally painting, I wouldn't get away with this, and I think I've said this before, it would just get really, really muddy. But I kind of liken digital art to a bit more like being a sculptor, where you've got, let's say, like a ball of clay, and you keep pulling and pushing and molding and cutting and sort of reworking it until it starts to look like you want. And that's kind of what digital art is, because you can always remold it and always sort of push things around or get rid of things if you don't like them. Whereas if I was painting on a canvas, I'd have to wait for it to dry and then probably completely paint over something and then start from scratch. Whereas this is constantly pulling and pushing. Here you can see I'm bringing in a bunch of old retro sort of 80s nostalgic posters. If you actually watch the film, the vampire's bedroom is full of these sort of retro posters, and one of the key ones is the Thriller image, as you can see there. So I decided just to grab some of my own retro posters that I found online and just see what they'd look like. So I didn't copy the wall exactly, so I just sort of put my own little bit of tastes in there. So you can see I've got Purple Rain, Thriller, Transformers, Lost Boys, Big Trouble in Little China, Ghostbusters. And I think I'd do a little bit later, I'd get a Bee Gees or a Wham photo, I think, one of the others. And Transformers ends up disappearing. So just painting over those posters now, just to give a sense of them rather than for them to be really clear. So obviously it's got to look painterly, and secondly, there's got to be some depth there. If there's too much detail, then those posters won't feel like they're pushed back into the background. So I need to reduce the amount of detail that was in them. So I just painted over them with one of my brushes and just sort of botched in the bits of colour. Here I'm using a bit of texture, so I grabbed an image, a stock image that I've got, and just added that to the wall to sort of make it feel a bit more rough. Still not settled on these colours. It does look very cartoony at the moment. And one thing you're going to see me do very, very often, which you've probably seen already, is me constantly flick backwards and forwards between the original image, just trying to get the angle right. Because I've done this painting in a portrait, I've added obviously the bottom and the top parts of the image, because it's actually done in widescreen. The cinematography was obviously a widescreen shot for a film, so I've done the painting as portrait, so I've added a top and a bottom. Still playing with those colours. I didn't really go in with a colour palette this time. I wanted skin tones, and then I kind of just started playing with whether the purples and the blue / red combination starts to work, and then I'm just playing with blending modes. Still struggling with that eye. One thing I've really started to learn about eyes is you can draw a perfect eye, but it can actually look dead, or a bit like a lifeless doll. And a lot of it has got to do with the position of the eyelid. If the eyelid is too sort of wide open, the eye looks lifeless, or almost like a corpse, or like a doll. Which you'll obviously, if you have to look at any dolls, you'll see that the eyes are wide open, and the dolls that actually look like they're alive tend to have a bit more like a lower eyelid. And if you're wondering why I know that, it's because I have a lot of dolls in my house because I have 2 daughters. I don't have a collection of my own dolls, if anyone's wondering. So here I'm still playing with the highlight of the face here. I mean, it was a real struggle really to get that lighting right. One thing I found is I'm much better at painting hair and giving the impression of hair. So I really like the way I've done the hair on both the characters here, but it's the lighting on the mainly on the vampire character, the girl character here, because the light's hitting at a very awkward angle. And if I was to paint this without a reference, I wouldn't have a clue, if I'm going to be honest, where the light would actually strike the face. It also depends on the kind of face it is as well. So you see there, I realised that I'd drawn the neck too long, and I was trying to get the angle a little bit better. Still not satisfied with that head, so I cut it out. I did a copy all layers, then pasted a new layer, and then I sort of painted around it to make it sit in a little bit better. You can see I'm still playing with those gradients there. Still not happy. Looking a little bit better. Flicking backwards and forwards constantly. can see that the angle, that one of the key issues I'd got wrong with the angle of the face was not seeing underneath the nose. So I had to shade or add more shade to the under part of the nose, so it looks like we're actually looking underneath the nose, and that way you can tell the head is slightly more tilted. But I mean, you can see, someone with a lot more skill than me would be able to go in and layer just a few strokes and know exactly where that lighting would go. But I'm at a stage where I'm still really playing with it, continually tweaking, messing around, sitting back, looking. One thing you probably don't realise about these paintings is that I don't sit down and do them in one go. This is over 2 days of constantly painting, and then, not constantly, like a cycle of painting, and then going away, doing something else, coming back, having a look at it, seeing it with fresh eyes, and painting again, going away, coming back. And it kind of feels like you're forever tinkering and tweaking. And you can see here I've almost completely lost what I'd got. It's almost disappeared, so I've kind of started again. Going back to that idea of it being almost like clay. I mean, it almost looks like I'm moulding clay here as well. You see, it's just completely changed the angle of the face. It's actually starting to improve. You can start to see that angle a little bit better. And here's a problem with copying from a photo and tracing over it as well, which you might not realise, is when you just copy the shading, the problem is it looks totally different on a real face than it does on a painting. And so you have to use some artistic judgment to get it right. Just copying like that, as you can see there, I just copied the outline, and I copied where the highlights were, and I was trying to understand more than anything where the light was hitting. It just didn't translate. And so I had to eventually settle on some artistic judgment, and that's something that I need to practice, and I think everyone really needs to practice. And a lot of the artists who are very good at doing this, not necessarily from doing it off by memory, but certainly by looking at a picture and just knowing exactly where the highlights and the shadows go, they've practiced it a lot, and so they've become really, really good at it. And it's really about understanding. It's not necessarily about a talent, really. It's about just developing your understanding out of practice and observations. See, I'm trying again here and still struggling. I think if I remember, I get rid of this little bit that I've done here, because it just didn't work. So I keep flicking backwards and forwards. Apologise if that's hurting anyone's eyes as they're watching this. Starting to add those little bits of highlights now, because I'm starting to see what I think needs to be done a little bit better now. Still playing with the colours, messing around with blending modes. Obviously the saturation has been pulled down right the way, and the colours are just a hint now. So there's like a purpley sort of tint to the characters. But those sort of very harsh colours that were there before, almost cartoony colours, have completely been removed. And again, if I was, with more practice, really, is I can go in with a vision, and I can sort of use a colour palette and just go, that's what's going to work. But at the moment, I'm still very much in the phase of tinkering afterwards, because I'm not satisfied with it, because the initial strokes that I've laid down haven't worked. Here's where you can see I'm finally starting to get the face where I need it to be. Took quite a while to get, but starting to blend those bits a little bit better. That's me. I think that's me using my oil brush there. It's where you realise that the human face is a very, very complex thing. There's so much emotion conveyed in it, and it's all in the subtleties of how the light hits the face that you start to get the mood and the story, really. Still playing with a lot of colours here, blending modes. Looks like there's disco lights flashing, but it's just me flicking through blending modes and really trying to settle on something. And I think that comes from not having, again, that practice and that vision, and almost being a digital artist as well, is because you've got so much freedom. You realise you can continually play with it, and actually you might have painted something one colour, and then at the very end of the painting you go, You put a color lookup table on there, or you add a color balance filter or something like that, and it just completely changes. And you kind of go, well, that's not what I intended, but that's actually much better than I thought. Here I'm attempting to paint in the Bee Gees. I had a go painting the Bee Gees. Didn't work, so I brought in a Wham poster, put on a bit of a paint Dobbs filter, and then toned it right the way down, painted over the top of it, just to give the impression of the characters. So it's kind of, they're just sort of there, as you can see. Roughed up the edges of the poster, and Transformers has now disappeared. And there you go. There's the final painting. I am quite pleased with it. I think there's a lot of improvements that could have been made, but there you go. Thanks for watching, guys.